There are a couple of seats at the front if anybody's brave. There you go. Minasama konnichiwa.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Come on, people. I know it's the last session, but I need a bigger Genki konnichiwa than that. Konnichiwa, minasama. Konnichiwa. Now, there you go. My name's Melanie Brock, and I'm the chair of the Australian and New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. But as I tell everybody who'll listen, I'm also a proud member of the ACCJ, and I'd like to thank everybody for having me here as the moderator for a session that is bound to be quite interesting with a terrific bunch of panellists. I'd like to just make a few comments and then I will start the process off. But firstly, I'd like to thank the Deutsche Bank Group for sponsoring today's session. It's a great show of commitment, not only to the process, but also to the support of the community as well. So I'd like to thank Deutsche Bank Group. I'd like to thank the panellists, and I'll introduce you to them in a little while. As you know, with something like this, it involves a little bit of work, it involves a little bit of commitment, there are a little bit of nerves. We're hoping for some outcomes and some solutions for everybody too. So I'd like to thank a wonderful group of panellists. Thank you. The third group is I'd like to thank you, the audience, for coming here today. I think the commitment to the American Chamber's Women in Business Summit is fantastic. It's great to see it growing. It's great to see it being supported at such high levels in Japan. I also think that today is very important that I can see lots of blokes here in the audience. So it's proof that men do matter. I'm wondering if that's the unanimous agreement on the part of the group. At this stage, I'd also like to thank Mori Sensei for her involvement here. She's a very good friend of mine and of everybody's here today. So I'd just like to acknowledge the presence of Masako Mori Sensei. Now, being an Australian and being me, I'm not very fond of rules, but apparently I have a lot of them. I am told to tell you that you have to turn your phones, your mobiles off. Well, not off. They have to go into manner mode. And you can busily tweet, though, because we obviously have a representative of Twitter.
Thank you.
I'm a big Twitter fan. I'm sure there are many other Twitter fans in the audience. Don't look disparagingly at the person next to you if it looks like they're doing work or sending emails to their husbands and wives and what have you. They're actually tweeting, so let's welcome that. It's on the record, though, so let's be careful. Well, no, let's have fun, basically. I think just to let you know that it is on the record, so that's all good. We also have a campaign at the ACCJ which allows for a special membership program for new members. So we will be trapping you as you leave if you're not a member. I will then get you later to join the Australian-New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. No, I'm not allowed to say that. Anyway, so the other rules that we have are I think it's wonderful to note, sometimes when I go to conferences like I was at one this afternoon, and it was all men. The whole room was, I think there were probably 4 women in a group of 600. And of course, there are never any ladies' loos on down there. And so today, I think all the toilets are female toilets. They've been converted over, and the boys have to go upstairs. So it's quite nice to know that we always get the early run on this one if anybody dares to leave. So now I would like to go back to the main part of the program and call on Makoto Kuwahara, who is the Chief Country Officer, Deutsche Bank Group. When I met Kuwahara-san the other day, what I thought was terrific was that not only does he have an interest in the whole issue of diversity for his workforce and for Japan more broadly speaking, but as a parent, he's keen to see what he might be able to do as well. So I'd now like to call him to the podium to make some opening remarks. それでは塚原さん、よろしくお願いします。
Good afternoon. I am Kuwahara from Deutsche Bank, and I'm very happy to see so many of you in the room. Very excited. Now, from the very if you were here in the morning, you've known that at the very opening, Prime Minister Abe talked about how the Japanese government, the country, is having a strong commitment listening to his speech from that sense is very important as we are the promoters of the diversities, that we recognize the importance of this. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity and talk about the diversity commitments and activities that we are doing at Deutsche Bank, as well as some other company overviews. At Deutsche Bank, no surprise, this is a private bank based in Germany. We have about 100,000 employees. We are going to have a restructuring plan coming up, so a lot of them needs to be laid off. Not a lot, but some of them needs to be so it's not going to be 100,000. The new head is coming, so the new strategy is going to be rolled out. And I was assured that there is no layoff plans, surveillance plan in Japan. So I think we should be feel comfortable. Now we have about 70 markets, and there's an announcement 70 is going to be cutting down to 60. But right now, as we speak, 70 markets as a universal bank. But as a matter of fact, we have about 145 countries, backgrounds of employees from 145 countries, and different. According to the Japanese statistics, 190. There are only 196 states available in the world. So Deutsche Bank, in terms of backgrounds, the nations, the languages, we are a very diverse organization. But are we diverse in gender diversity? I think globally speaking, Deutsche Bank is still in the process of the way journey. DAX is the index in Germany. It's a securities stock index. Top 30 companies, that includes Deutsche Bank, have they have statistics or like a targets in terms of how many female executives as percentage that we have to have. By 2017, we have to improve the executives of female executive to consist of 30%. We are, by the way, very far from that target. Diversity can be very critical for the processes and the organizations of a business, and we are committed to that. So we have many diverse backgrounds in terms of the countries, but as we promote diversity on a day-to-day basis, we have different races, different ethnicity, different gender, different backgrounds. So recognizing and respecting differences, our workforce, our work environment, ready to respect the differences. And I think once we can respect that, different capabilities can be more leveraged. So we believe diversity is very important at our business. Globally, in Deutsche Bank, I think it was about 20 years ago, in New York office, Women in Business program was launched. It was an event, but that was a starting point of promoting diversity at the organization. After that, at our Frankfurt headquarters, followed suit, followed by London, Sydney, Singapore, and very recently, Milan also hosted the event, diversity events. Ever since then, but still, we are not there in terms of gender diversity. We are given the targets, but we have not met the targets. Now, today's topic is why men matter. Deutsche Bank's this year's gender diversity program has a theme, and that's exactly that. And we are very happy that this conversation is going to be on the same topic. Now, as we speak, talk about diversities. That means, let's face it, executives and a lot of workforces are men. So men needs to first recognize what are the challenges, what are the gaps, why women cannot fully execute or enjoy their capabilities as best as they can, and what are the gaps, what men can do, and that's the theme. Of course, speaking about it does not necessarily come to actions. So hopefully from this meeting, we want to hear specific action, specific initiatives that men can take part, that we can start from tomorrow on a day-to-day basis. This is going to be a long discussions, but I hope this is going to be a very interactive discussions. Please make sure you raise your questions from the audiences if you have any. So that concludes my part of the opening remark. Thank you very much.
Okie dokie. So now it starts in proper. I'd like to firstly introduce the panel, and then I'm just going to make a few comments and then start the process off. First of all, everybody will have the program, so I hope you won't mind if I shorten the process of introduction by just giving you the names of the people involved and not their full CVs, because we have such a wonderful group of people here that you will know that they have a great background and a lot of activities that they're engaged in Japan and abroad. First of all, to my left, I have the Country General Manager and Northeast Asia Regional Managing Director for Twitter Japan, Yu Sasamoto-san. Welcome, Sasamoto-san. And the tweeting should start at that moment, people, of course. Do what you do, best people. Then I'm going to introduce you to Inoue Yukari-san, Managing Director for Japan and Korea for the Kellogg Company. Welcome. Thank you. Tim Brett, a Representative Director and President of Coca-Cola Japan. Thank you, Tim. And then we have the Vice President of Catalyst Japan Women Research and Consulting, who is the appointee as the head of Catalyst Japan from August 1, Tsukiko Tsukahara. So we can say welcome and congratulations. And then my new friend, Tamio Honma, Managing Director, Head of Markets, Japan Deutsche Securities, who's from New Jersey and Japan. So as part of my preparation for today's seminar, even though I'm now feeling like I've been given extra homework from Tsukahara-san in terms of the things that he wants from the actual session, but I actually gave Liz Broderick a call and had a bit of a chat to her. And Liz Broderick, people will know, is the Australian Human Rights Commissioner. She's also the brains and the push, I think, the passion behind the Male Champions of Change program in Australia that I know she has spoken to Mori Sensei on several occasions about. And Liz said, when I asked her about the title and the actual process of this panel, she said she thought it was very important because it is exactly what the Male Champion of Change program does. It allows for men to be disruptive and to use their influence to try and change behaviour and to produce better results for both genders. It allows for men to stand by women, not to speak on behalf of or to speak for women. It allows men to not save women, but to stand and assist them in the process of getting change in the audience, in the workplace. And so she felt that it was a really important discussion for Japan to be having in terms of how people use their influence. And as we know, while we don't like it all the time, power resides with men. So as one of the Male Champions of Change in Australia has said, if you do not actively and intentionally include women, the system will unintentionally exclude them. And I think that's a really important statement to start our process off today. So the other rule that I forgot, because as you can tell I forget rules, is that we're supposed to have fun. My boss at the Chamber, Laura Younger, said the one thing she would really like from this session is that it was enjoyable for people, and I think Kuwahara-san said the same. So once we have the panellists give their 2 or 3 minute introduction to their own focus and their own company's efforts, we'll be calling on members of the audience to help us with this process. So look forward to working with you this afternoon. So I'd now like to then ask Catalyst to run through a few things for us, some ideas about what we might do in the workplace to bring about change. So thank you very much. よろしくお願いします。
My name is Tsukahara from Catalyst. Catalyst was established in 1962 in US. It's an NPO, and US, Canada, Europe, and India are some of the offices. Recently, it was established in Japan and Australia. We are research-based association. So through database, we deal with diversity and inclusion. So this session is Why Men Matter. And I think this is really a significant, important theme. So thank you for invitation. Why men matter. Before jumping into this theme, I would like to talk about the purpose of diversity. Maybe this is just a reminder for those of you who are here today. Through Catalyst research, we have some companies which have a lot of board members, women. This is a corporate social responsibility index, and some important indexes are community, customer, and environment, supply chain, and business ethics, and employees. So those are 6 important indices, and also the percentage of women in the board. And we looked at the relativity and correlation, and 4 important things. We found out that the higher the percentage of women, there is more positive outcome in the 4 indexes. And then there's business ethics and employees. And we did not find any correlation with the percentage of women executives. But at least if you look at the sex in terms of diversity, it means it's really a fundamental issue for the company management. This diversity has positive influence in many fields, and this is shown by research. That's why diversity cannot be looked at only from women's perspective, but it needs to be actively involved by the male executives. That's why we have this theme today. And let me continue with why men matter. Catalyst Global Research shows that when men deal with diversity, there are several bottlenecks. And we made a deep interview of several executives of big companies. These bottlenecks can be categorized into 3. One is apathy. Diversity is an issue that women should deal with, and men tend to think this is women's issue. Second challenge is fear. This is as important as apathy. There are different types of fear. One is if you are dealing with diversity, other male executives will look at you with a strange look. And if you say something wrong, maybe you would be looked at as not useful. And so fear of mistake. And third is your position by involving in diversity, your position will be threatened. So that's kind of a zero-sum perspective. And another bottleneck is diversity is not promoted because people don't understand why there is a gender gap, gender discrimination. There may be some cost, but you don't know about this cost. That's why you are not incentivized in dealing with diversity. So I hope that the panelists, will talk about how to overcome these challenges. Thank you. So all of you today, I'm sure you have nothing to do with apathy.
through the discussion with the panellists, but also with any people who might have ideas how we overcome that, or if in fact it is in fact the case in your own circumstances. I'm now going to jump to ask Tim. We didn't have any organisation in terms of order, but Tim said to me on the telephone the other day that I could call on him at any occasion. Tim.
Yeah, okay. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
You said it.
It's always difficult coming behind someone with very valid research, and thank you for that. So now you're just going to hear from me. And
Sorry.
I have no research.
We'd love to hear from you.
Where do we start? Well, the objective is why men matter. That's the conversation. Let me start by saying that, and you won't be surprised, that I think men matter very much in this. It's that today, I don't believe is targeted at women. I think it's targeted at society, and obviously men make up half of society. So when we look at why men matter, I think we can categorize it, Melanie, everybody, into two main areas. One is that, rightly or wrongly, men are in positions of power. Not all men and not all positions in power. We can have that conversation later. But rightly or wrongly, lots of positions of power are held by men. Therefore, men have an opportunity to use the power, the authority that comes with their job description to make change. Now, we heard that right from the start of the day today with Prime Minister Abe. And it's okay to use statements, and we heard it earlier, like change starts from the top, but we have to then get on and do it. He's clearly making a stand. We now wait for the execution, but the goal is good. We as business leaders also have to make a stand, and we can't change laws initially, maybe eventually we can, but we can change policies and procedures, and perhaps we can try and change culture. So that's one thing. One area is through positions of authority that rightly or wrongly many men hold, we can try and drive change. Second area I would say is we can try and be role models for change. Again, men make up half the population, and what we're looking to achieve not only in Japan but around the world. This is not a Japan-only issue. Let's say that up front. This issue is not Japan-only. It's too easy for a foreigner to sit on this panel and say this is a particular Japan issue. It's not. It's everywhere, and there are some elements that are perhaps stronger in Japan, and there are some elements that are weaker. Let's not try and change Japan into something that's unrecognizable, because it's pretty good the way it is. So we could be role models for that change, and we can show people how it means to change, and that can be through the way we work, through the way we lead our businesses, or if we're not in a position of authority, simply by how we live. We've heard the theme throughout today, so I'm not about to say something new, but it's important to change women's position in business, but there has to be a recognition that something else has to give in that process. It can't just be more of everything. So I think we men can ask ourselves some hard questions. Do we do enough to help outside of work as well? So those are two areas that we could talk about later on. We can make change through positions of authority, through rules and policies and procedure, and I've got lots of examples and thoughts.
I will jump in and ask you again then very soon.
Good. So please do. Yeah, I'm happy to talk.
Excellent.
I like talking.
There you go. Yeah. I do too, as everyone in the room probably knows by now. But what I would say is that what you've brought up about that action too is really important. I got a sense I was, as I say, not able to join the program from this morning, but I was following it through Twitter, and I could see that people were saying, well, what do we do now? Yeah. So what will be the next steps and how we bring that about? So I think Tim's raised an important point. We're also going to try in the second third of today to look at some work-life balance sort of ideas about what we do to bring about some change. And the other thing is at the end, we'd love for everybody to leave knowing that there are just a few areas that you could do, like something that we could do ourselves, and that as a group we'd be really strong around. So I think that's a great start to that. So thank you very much,
Thanks.
Tim. Inoue-san, do you think I could now ask for you to make a few comments? Thank you.
Good to see you. My name is Inoue. Very good to see you. I am, this is invited to ACCJ, so I thought I have to speak in English, but apparently we see many Japanese friends in the room, so I'll speak in Japanese language. And now, I mean, seriously, I personally, from my experience, and I am now a managing director at Kellogg, so I'll speak from the two different hats, wearing two. So personally, first of all, I started to be in business 30 years ago. But Japanese companies do not really recruit happily women who graduated from colleges. Boys who graduated from colleges, they are very popular. They get like 3 boxes full of direct mails inviting them to join my company, not getting the invitations. So I have 2 different options back then. One, am I ready to get into the Japanese businesses? Or do we want to work for non-Japanese company? I decided to take a second option, working for foreign companies. So I didn't experience the stereotypical reactions to women for the last 30 years. Mostly I spent my time at the American companies. Diversities and inclusions were very much recognized as the something critical for the organization, for the better developments of talents. So if you work hard, companies will assess your performance very fairly. That was where I was brought up ever since I was in business. Now, thinking back at where I am standing today, Japanese companies are starting to recognize the importance of diversity as a sustainability of their business. And if they don't believe that, they seriously need to believe that. If the top management do not believe that, you are in trouble. Because change management could be, there are many different change managements, but the top management to change, to absolutely commit, yes, I will change for diversity, that's required. But unfortunately, most of the leaders in Japan, top managements, are men. So this team, why men matter, is I have to say the answer is yes, absolutely, why not? Right? Needless to say, because without that, change will not happen. So Deutsche Bank invited me, and I'm very excited for this opportunity to find out the thoughts that are coming from the men about this particular topic. Thank you.
That does bring me back to a point that I wanted to make earlier, actually, about the whole issue. I think Tim alluded to it as well, that this is not in any way designed to be a panel where we preach to Japan. And I think that that's been the focus of the group today, that there's been a great sense of how people can help each other, really, and how organisations can learn from other organisations. So I certainly, as an Australian in Japan, I also, like Inoue-san, haven't experienced any discrimination of any type in terms of my own gender. And so I think that it's not really simply about what our own experience is, but what we can do with that experience to help organisations have better practice, perhaps, as well. So I think Inoue-san can probably talk to us a little bit later about that hara ni ochiru. I just learned a new Japanese phrase, which I love, because we talk about that in English, don't we? We talk about something being right, through to your tummy. You feel things, and feel it in your waters, or whatever we say. I don't know. But that hara ni ochiru, it's an important expression for us to know, because it does have to be felt by everybody at all levels. So I have been the fantastic marketing expert for Twitter today, I would have to say. So I'm going to hand straight over to Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. I thought I was invited because you're a Twitter lover and brought up in Australia, but I'm going to do it in Japanese. Is that okay?
どうぞどうぞ。
All right. Okay. はじめまして、Twitter Japan の笹本。
I am Sasamoto from Twitter Japan. Very nice to see you. Inoue-san started working. Very first company she worked at was a foreign company, and I started working. My career started at a company called Recruit back in 1988. Back then, the company Recruit was very one with the unique culture, and it still is today. But fortunately, I had started my career in that unique company. So we, as well as I personally, were not exposed myself with the stereotypical approaches to genders in my career development. The first year after I joined the company, I happened to have my colleague who joined the company together at the same year. She said, do you want a coffee? So she asked me very casually, right, in the morning. So I said, yeah, please. And then there's my boss, a supervisor. She's a woman. She said, that's wrong. This is not that kind of company. You go out and get your coffee yourself. And that was the time my mindset completely go 180. And of course, I was brought up in Australia. Yeah, you should get the Australian husband, right? That's how kind, gentle Australian. No.
They are.
まあそういう環境に育った。
So, but that was the environment I was in. So that didn't feel foreign to me. But then I was reminded on this day that I started my work at the company. You know, whether you are man or woman, you get that message, and whatever you hear as a message on the first day remains, right? Stays. So I think my attitudes, behavior ever since then changed. Now I am at Twitter. We have something called SWAT. In the United States, SWAT feels something very aggressive, the team, which is scary. But in the Twitter, we call it Superwoman at Twitter. That's what's short for SWAT, and we have that activity.
So, as Tim mentioned, the employment of men and women, the leadership is not just an issue of Japan. So it's not only the country, but it depends on the industry as well. In the IT industry, women leaders are very few in number. So it's an IT, so we have programming, and many of the employees are programmers, so it's difficult to educate women programmers. So not just Twitter, but we train women in programming and how we can train women in Twitter. This theme is taken up not just by women, but among men too. When we brought this to Japan, this program was started only by women. But when it's only started by women, people feel isolated, and you can't really you can't make a progress in an open manner. So we have a male executive in this program. He was from the sales marketing. So we put this man intentionally because he had always been in the boys club. And now he's a sponsor and he's very active in this program. So I think the nurturing women's leadership in men, I think this is a very important thing. So
different sectors and see how those differences do play out. As you've said, in IT, it's different.
It is.
It's something that you've recognised as a company, but you obviously see that as it plays out in the company as well. So I think that's quite interesting for us to focus on how our different industries will support the change and what we do to bring that about. So now, finally, and sorry you're last, but Honma-san, thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. When talking about topic of men matters, I think there's two facets. One is, as Tim mentioned, at the workplace. Our CEO mentioned at the opening that Deutsche Bank has a DAX 30 commitment in terms of the percentage of senior management. To give more detail, we have committed to 25% of our MDs and Ds, the two highest corporate titles. And we were, I think, 16% back in 2011. We're at 19%, but still short of the 25%. The other very important statistic, though, is that the overall Deutsche Bank population, 42% are women. So there's enough women, close to 50%, for us as a whole. However, we have a very small percentage of senior women in the senior management roles. So there's an acute understanding within our management globally that somewhere in between, and we also hire quite a few graduates that are female, for example, in Japan. But somewhere between them getting hired and up the corporate ladder, something happens where the ratio is significantly lower as we go up the pyramid. And clearly, if we're at 19%, the remaining 81% has a big role to play. Either they're the problem or the solution or both. So we are coming up with all sorts of specific programs targeted at up-and-coming female talent to help them really get up to the upper echelons of management. One program in Asia Pacific, 2 programs globally that's been running for a few years to great success. And looking at myself personally from a commercial point of view, last 3 years of my top 3 salespeople in Japan, 2 have been women consistently for the last 3 years. So it is in my selfish commercial interest to make sure that these senior women succeed, and for the junior women coming up, that there's a strong set of role models that they can look up to. So that's what I think Tim's point in terms of men definitely matter in the workplace. I think the other point, I think equally important, is the role of men in the household. And sadly, I think, to be very honest, I think Tim was very kind about this is not a Japan problem, but a global problem. In terms of the general Japanese men, and I'm one of them, but there, in terms of awareness and recognition that they have to take the burden of household chores, would be child rearing, all sorts of household chores and things like that, I think is a little bit behind, definitely Western, definitely U.S. She has a Japanese husband.
Your wife's in the room.
And I'm glad my wife is not in the audience because I'm sure she'll have a few things to say on this point. So I think, and just from my personal experience, my mother, who's, God bless her, she's 82 now, but she was very unusual back in her age that she graduated from university in Japan and went straight to graduate school in the US. Like, no one did that back then. And she got her master's, and she had a career all throughout her life as a social worker. So I grew up seeing a mother who was at a professional career and working all the time. However, I also know that our household would not have survived hadn't my grandparents, my mom's parents, came to live with us. So from that sort of support perspective, I think Japan is still a little bit challenged versus some of the other countries where child support is more readily available. And in that sense, I think the role of men, not just in the workplace, but helping women pursue their careers, I think is also very important and sometimes not recognized enough when we talk about promoting women.
Yeah. We wanted to talk about that whole, I mean, you know, it's not all about flexible work practices. I think it's a lot to do with approach and commitment and just the family life in general. It's what that family looks like. You've got to recognise difference, which is quite hard sometimes in Japan, isn't it? I was wondering if, Inoue-san, you could build a little bit more on your story of the hara ni ochiru thing. In terms of, you've looked at Japan and you're obviously you play an important role in Japan, but you've looked at Japan and Japan's organisational structure from a gaishike point of view. What would you do if you were made managing director, CEO of a major Japanese company? What would you do tomorrow that you learned? What would you do tomorrow?
Sure.
To bring that about, to bring that?
Probably the best way is to work in declining business. I think if we make a change, we need those circumstances. And I think otherwise, people feel like they are doing great, so they are enjoying what they are doing. So this is one. But, even though I'm talking about declining company, yeah, but I think even good performing company, okay company in Japan are not performing good enough versus the rest of the multiple companies. Yeah, so ROE is very low. Those kind of real performance factors, and Japanese company is weak, inferior. Some of the companies inferior. So therefore, I really think shareholders can really push harder. Can you really deliver higher business performance? And I'm sure that they need women's power to improve business performance. That's the bottom line. So you'd
jump in.
Yeah.
You'd be disruptive. No, I'm just saying you would know. Poor Tim, he's now been known as the jumping in person.
No, that was my role.
It is indeed, apart from a very important commitment. But in OSN, you would become involved in that disruptive.
Yep,
You would
yep.
try to influence.
Yep.
By
Yeah, actually, I start. Sorry about it, but I start, independent board role for Suntory Food and Beverage, and that's where I think I can really learn how Japanese company, big corporation, harm the culture and try to make changes to promote women's enhancement. That's why I think I was appointed. So I'm very looking forward to really understand what the core issues and challenges, and how can we practically improve.
I think we're all looking forward to seeing what can be done, and we will support you on that journey.
Definitely.
Just on that now, we've got some Sakura-ko, some special attendees, participants, who are going to ask us some questions about a different, they have been pointed out, they know who they are. First of all, I thought that we just might talk a little bit about the notion of sponsorship, because I think that came up from a couple of the panellists. So I was going to ask Rei Motoyama if you might like to. There we go. Beautiful. Sakura number 1. Thank you. Dozo.
Okay. So I believe as women pursue their career, it's very important to have a sponsor that takes ownership for your career. I was very lucky to go to the training program last year by Deutsche Bank, which was targeted for some selected directors in APAC region. And that program focused on having a sponsor. And after having that program, I was very lucky to have Tamio-san as my sponsor.
She has to say that here, right?
She has to.
No choice.
I told her to say it.
It's a setup.
We had monthly meeting, and it was very helpful. He gave me lots of insights and helped me to network with senior management people. And it's quite different from having a mentor.
Sure.
Having a sponsor, and especially for women, I think even at a foreign company like Deutsche Bank, we don't have so much female MDs. Actually, there's only one MD in Japan. She's here, so there's not so much example, to look up. Especially there's no sales MD, so it's very important to have male senior people to encourage
sure.
female workers to go throughout the career.
Thank you. I don't know that was necessarily a question, but what I wanted to ask is if there are any non-Sakura people who might ask a question about sponsorship, particularly because I think that sometimes people, it's very hard to grab a sponsor, I think, isn't it? I think it's quite hard to nominate or to find that sponsor. Does anybody want to sort of tell us about some great examples, or in fact some shocking examples of where it's been really hard, or are we all got great sponsors and support by the sounds of it?
I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
It's not a question.
I didn't throw to you yet,
I'll
but please do.
I'll ask myself a question.
Ask yourself a question, that would be lovely. Thank you, Tim.
There was a comment earlier, so I'm trying to make this conversational. There was a comment earlier this afternoon about the difference between sponsoring and mentoring.
Yep.
And the way it was positioned, and I apologise if the person was in the room, is like it's an either-or. I don't think it needs to be an either-or. Certainly what we are having some success with at Coca-Cola in Japan, not necessarily best practice, but it's working for us, is people having both a sponsor and a mentor. So we have had a mentoring scheme for a long time where senior leaders or middle managers, from male or female, can identify a mentor who they work with, who's somebody other than their boss, to talk about career issues. And then recently, we've expanded that by saying we would identify a group of female talent that we think has a long runway, female talent for the future, already reasonably senior leaders, and we also give them a sponsor. And the difference really is about investing. So a senior leader, myself, one of my direct reports, is now invested in that person. They are identified as that person's sponsor, and they have an obligation, not a choice anymore, an obligation to work with that person and try and find useful areas to input. And I guess the key difference to me about mentoring and sponsorship is mentoring is very valuable. It's someone to talk to, and there's no ownership. Sponsoring, there's a bit more ownership. But I think, especially when we're talking about foreign words, what worries me, and that's what I reacted to the earlier comment, is it doesn't really matter that much how you define mentoring or sponsorship. It shouldn't have to be either or. It's about the intention. And then very importantly, and this will come through, I think, the whole conversation this afternoon, it's about metrics. It's about having something that you can measure. So the conversations that we have with our assigned sponsors is, have you met with your person? We don't want to know everything they spoke about because often it's confidential, but have you met? When
so
did you
you're
meet?
sort of checking in on the regularity, the not the actual conversation as you say, but the nature of that conversation, how it takes place.
Absolutely, man. And when most of us in the room here have some type of targets in our job. You know, it might be sales or market share or revenue or profit. Everybody will have some type of different target. But when we set goals for change in society or culture, if we don't set a target and then very importantly hold ourselves accountable for that target, then it's just a waste of time. There's
so you're very pro-quota then?
No, not necessarily quota. Targets is different.
Right.
Because they can be self-imposed. Quota implies somebody else imposed it. And I would prefer to have a target that we set ourselves. I think it's more powerful. What's the phrase? I don't speak Japanese. But it comes from within if it's your own target rather than one given to you. So,
I am sure your company has it. Kellogg has a bonus scheme for covering 5% of annual incentive program is related to the diversity and inclusion, specifically hiring and promoting and retaining the people for women, parity or better.
Well, that's a great.
Then you get 5%.
That's a great piece.
So if not, why not?
Yeah, it's
that process is very important. How do you handle that at Twitter? Because you talk about this SWOT.
Sure.
You know, that because that's quite an interesting model.
Well, actually, this isn't really Twitter, but my prior job was at Microsoft, and we actually had metrics called Work Health Index, and this was part of our executive-owned scorecard and metric, and it included how many women employees you have, how many manager women you have. Those are combined all together to construct the index. And I think that kind of metric approach is also important. But also, it was interesting that you brought up the mentorship, because I think both sponsorship and mentorship is pretty, I think, still new concept for a lot of the Japanese companies, which actually is a great way to start the discussion of such topic, because it opens up the opportunity for people to you can talk about yourself, or you can talk about your career, whether you're female or male, it doesn't matter. And again, I was really fortunate that I started my career at Recruit because I had a mentor at Recruit from my first year. So that was one of the programs that Recruit encouraged the employees to join, and that was very helpful for not only myself, but obviously for women employees to be very open, to enable them to be open to any topic of discussion outside of their core job.
You also had a strong female manager who told you to make your own coffee, didn't you?
Exactly.
So, I mean, you know, just in terms of that role model, I think that's important, that there's somebody who's making a statement about how they see the organisation should play out. So I think that's really important.
Coffee.
And you make, well, there you go. We're all freed about fun. Actually, we've got something more along the lines of alcohol beverage in mind. But in any case, let's get back to the job. I thought we'd just talk a little bit about some of the steps that you can go about to maybe get that type of sponsor. I don't know, Sakahara-san, if you've got any ideas about how you approach, because the Japanese work structure is probably going to be quite sort of hierarchical and quite difficult for some of our Japanese colleagues in Japanese companies to actually say to somebody senior, if there isn't that sponsorship and or mentor program in place, I need help along these lines. What do you think we should do? How do we do that? よろしくお願いします。
Well, now this is my personal experience, okay? and I previously worked at the consulting firm, and there was a mentorship program, but it was how do I say it? Unlike sponsorship program, it was a casual conversations. So there is no sustainable or the consistent commitment coming out from the mentorship program. So more recently, we have decided launching something closer to sponsorship program. Sponsor can be either man or woman. It doesn't have to be exactly the role model or not. Sponsor will make sure that person, that woman, will be escalated. So sponsor will be behind her, helping her. And that program, and there's a commitment associated with it from both sides, right? If I'm asking questions, then she needs to commit to make sure she delivers to all those responses that she's getting from. And so the commitment is coming from the both. And that was one of the things that we are doing. And speaking about mentorship, and maybe this is a kind of a completely opposite approach, but since we are talking about men matter, for men, you might want to find a woman mentors. Because for men, this idea of diversity, even if you want to engage yourself, maybe you do not have no idea where to start. You do not know where the issues or the gaps are. I'm pretty sure there are many men who feel that, whether you are at senior level or not so senior. So maybe just deliberately choosing women mentors. There are some companies who do that. No, not Japanese company. Volvo is the company, and this is so there's a diversity program only for men. There's different courses throughout the year, and throughout the year you will find the woman mentor, and the woman will give advices and then keep track of how the men's are starting to change. By the time the years passed, you are graduating from that program, and you can join as the alumni. So you are getting big network become bigger, and the awareness initially was very low, but the men's are more engaged with diversity. I think they have a nice framework.
Are there any questions from the audience on this subject or any comments? Anybody? Before I go to my next Sakura. Here we go. A non-Sakura person. Okie dokie.
Thanks, Manly. I'm supposed to be here helping you run the panel, but I've got a question at this point. I think it's very interesting on the Japanese company side, because I think the informal networking as well as the formal processes in the workplace are also very critical to career development over time. It's about building those relationships. Tends to be a longer period of employment, maybe lifetime employment. So it's a long amount of time that goes by to build up the confidences and the relationships, and a lot of the exposure is not just in the workplace, in the meetings, but it's the after five, the kairi michi no ippon, that kind of thing. So within that kind of an environment, how do we help to promote women's networking as well as their sponsorship and mentorship relationships, which are a bit more formal, the informal side?
I think it just makes everything very, very busy, and sometimes put a lot of pressure on the parent to attend to childcare, collection from school. So there needs to be a lot of structural support for the families, I think, for both men and for women. Do any of our panellists have any thoughts on that informal, formal networking, how it works, how it could work? Honma-san, have you got any ideas?
Yeah, I think one of the things we do at Deutsche Bank is in addition to sort of the sponsorship, so that would be someone in your direct line of command that would own your advancement and really push you up the organization. But separate from that, we have sort of a mentor, or you call it big brother, big sister program, where we intentionally pick someone who's not in the direct reporting line. So someone who, as a alternative sounding board, or especially for the junior staff who's coming up, they have a question, maybe they're not happy in that current role. That's really difficult to discuss with your direct manager, but an outlet that they have elsewhere. And that also helps in terms of networking, because if that person is in a different part of the firm, that kind of makes the connection to an area that otherwise they wouldn't have network into.
Definitely. I think that's important, Tim.
Just linked to that, we have an internal organisation, a little bit, I think, like the SWAT organisation of Twitter, although I don't know enough about that. But I guess it's similar. We call it Women's Link, which stands for Lead, Inspire, Connect. There's about 65% of our female employees are part of that organisation. They organise meetings themselves. We've had, I think, 24 meetings in 3 years, so quite frequently. But what I'm leading to is coming out of that, we then have a peer circle organisation where they break into informal groups, which comes back to the informal comment, informal groups of 4 or 5 women who we encourage to go to lunch once a month or so to talk about issues. Now, I think what works for us on that is it's a good blend of the formality that you sometimes need in an organisation, and let's face it, particularly in Japan, you need the formal structure, plus the informality of people deciding who they're going to go with, what their own structures will be, what they're going to talk about. So I think that combination of formal and informal works quite well.
Has worked, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a single mum and I'm now a grandmother, but I found it very difficult to work within the quite rigid structure of the childcare collection times, drop-off times, the difficulty of being asked to do something last minute. How did you handle that? Having to go and collect the kids and then do something with them while you're still answering telephone calls, etc. Doing all the bits and pieces, and more recently, of course, emails. So I think there's a whole range of pressure probably on all workers, not just women, because I think that's the important part of that. But it's how we support them in these type of informal and or formal structures, isn't it? Really? Yeah. Because I think everybody wants to make sure that not one group of people in your organisation is overly pressured through any of this. I know that.
We'll come back to this subject because I know that it's been a theme throughout the day. Another topic is Japanese work style in terms of hours and length of days. Will we come back to that later on?
Probably it'll be too late. And no, I'm saying, I'm getting pressure from the timekeepers in the front row. But no, I think it's important that as part of our wrap up with the actions for going forward, what can we do to address this? Because it has been a big theme of the day. It's a big theme of the work.
I think Tim's point is right on, because it related to why men matters.
Yeah. It does.
For them, it doesn't matter to work long because housewives is taking care of the things at home, right? So I think that's the fundamental difference between the women who has a family and the men who has a family. So until 40 years, I always feel like, I wish I could be born as a man. Yeah, I'm sure, and maybe not many, but some people might think like that. They're fundamentally different, right?
It's kind of negative cycle based on the stereotype role division between men and women, right?
Yeah.
I saw a woman drop her child off this morning.
Yeah, productivity matters, right?
Well, that's what it comes down to. It's productivity, of course, and the pressure that's placed on both groups. I saw a woman drop her son today. She was on a bicycle. He's maybe grade 2 primary school, and it was 7:45, and the little one was crossing the big road by himself. And I could see this pressure on her face. And I thought about it, and I thought it's not actually just pressure about whether he gets across the road or not. It's whether she can hurry up and get him across the road, get on her bike and get to work and do what she has to do. So there's a whole range of pressures that happen outside the workplace. One story that I heard from Liz Broderick was that she asked the male champions of change, as men, and because men matter, what could those men do? And one of the guys was talking about an assignment in terms of giving one of his workers a special project. And they talked amongst themselves and decided that it would be difficult to give to a woman, not because she wasn't capable, but because she had family. So somebody said, well, let's talk to her and see what she can do. Now, her partner said that he would look after the children. It involved overseas travel. She went overseas for 6 weeks, back and forth, and she did a deal with the employer that she got 6 weeks off at the end of the year at the time of Christmas holidays when she could stay home with her family. So I think there's that engagement or that process of negotiating a different system. But I do recognise, and I know a lot of you here are working in Japanese companies, it's very hard to negotiate that from a position of lesser power, obviously. And I think that's something that we're talking about now, isn't it? About getting role models, sponsors, mentors, but structure to help men stand by women and support it.
And Millen, another point on that. I think as much as it's important to enable women to take care of the children, one of the things I spend time thinking about is there are definitely women that choose not to have kids, and they're in the office till 10 p.m., just like the typical male Japanese worker. And we need to be sensitive to the fact that if the women with the children take time off, clearly there's the people who are left have to take on the rest of the burden, right? And that's men and women. So as a manager, I think we need to really be careful about balancing and making sure that people who pick up the slack and help that person take the time off are recognized for that teamwork and compensated appropriately, because that environment is very important, right?
And how they build the team from that point on, etc.
And this brings us to that terrible phrase, and you've already said it once today, Melanie, of work-life balance. It's a terrible, terrible phrase.
Why is it terrible?
Because it implies that work isn't part of life.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair point. I agree.
And Tim, Coca-Cola is part of life, right?
I knew that was coming.
We don't have
he told me to do that. He told me to do that.
I could recommend this life.
Oh, goodness.
That was terrible. That wasn't why I wanted to make that point.
But
my point is that we all spend, depending on the organisation, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day working. If we don't enjoy our work, then I would strongly suggest, irrespective of gender, find another job. Because work and life is part of the same thing. Now, what we have to do, all of us, whatever position we're in, is try and create an environment where the organisation respects your private life. Now, I think that's the better phrase, rather than work-life balance.
So, what should the phrase be, then?
We should aim to have organisations that respect people's private life. Because that way, it doesn't matter whether somebody's private life is to go and look after their children. That's a choice they made. It may be to go and do sport. It may be to do a hobby. So there's a risk always in these conversations. It comes back to working mothers. It doesn't have to be working mothers. It can be respecting people's private life, whatever the choice they made. And if you make people work till 11 at night, they have no private life.
No. Well, my comment about the woman on the bike this morning was just not that she was a woman. It was more the pressure on her face. That was the issue.
And probably I thought she's going through her head that I should have dropped him off at a pedestrian crossing.
It's exactly. Well, I helped him on his way. But I've got another Sakura. You'll forgive me, but Sarah Ellie Shimabukuro has some interesting work to refer to. So thank you. This is now called life balance in all of our language, isn't it? No more work-life balance. Dozo.
So I wanted to talk about from the mother's perspective, why men matter, and we already covered that extensively, so I'm not going to be too long. But in my view, men matter as, of course, as co-workers and as managers and bosses. Men matter as fathers and as husbands. And so I work for Deutsche Bank, but we're not here to praise Deutsche Bank all day, so I'm not going to mention name. But I'm very lucky to work for 2 senior executives who, in my view, are great fathers. And it's not at the institutional level. In the firm, we have some work-life balance, work-life arrangement that working mothers can take. But what's really important to me in what they do and how they act as role model is that they are involved in their children's education, and they are showing it. Sometimes they're leaving early to go pick up their kids. They're taking lunch break to go to some school events. They're talking about their kids' music lessons, showing us videos. And that really makes me feel confident as a working mother to do the same thing. And I think that's something really easy for every man in the room to do. We don't have to really turn upside down the whole company and be super innovative in terms of new policies. If every single father in the room is vocal about his family life, sometimes leave early and let everyone know that he's leaving early to take care of his children, then every single woman around him will feel confident to do the same thing.
Thank you.
So I think that's something that we can easily do on an individual basis.
Well, thanks, Sarah. I think also then to Tim's point, that it should be that the person says, I'd actually like to leave today because there's an art exhibition that I am really interested in seeing, or I have opera tickets, or I'm going to see, I don't know who people see anymore. But, you know, it should be that flexibility that people have to break away from their daily work. So in that sense, how do we bring about that change? Well, that's then relying on men who are in leadership roles to help disrupt what we know is the current situation, isn't it? So, Deborah Hazelton, thank you. Can I have a microphone for my friend, please? Thank you.
So I apologise if someone else has heard me say this today, but I'm just wondering, one of the issues that strikes me is that there is a sense, if we do ask or we do insist that people start going home early or leave early for some kind of private life event, that the unfairness around that is that someone else has to pick up that extra work. And that's very fair comment and criticism. But the way I've been tackling it lately is saying, well, actually, do we have to do that work? Or certainly, do we have to do that work to that level of perfection
today?
Yeah. And so one of the, you know, I'm a strong believer that sometimes because the Japanese culture is so geared towards beauty and perfection and completeness, that sometimes we don't say, you know, this needs to be perfect, but this doesn't. And so can we just start saying, this doesn't need to be done to 100% perfection, and guess what? I've done everything that needs to be done to 100% perfection today.
But that's
so
fine for now.
I'm going to go and pick up my child.
Or
go to the art gallery.
Or play soccer tonight because I'm part of a team or something.
Yeah.
Anybody else in the audience? Or then I'll come, gentlemen. Thank you.
Dieter Howard, Lacoste Japan. If I could bring it back for a moment, because many panelists have talked about mentors and sponsors. I think why men matter is important, but it's also important to ask ourselves how men matter. When you think of most of leadership positions still being occupied by men, one key question is, how do you make sure of the quality of the sponsorship, the mentorship?
As opposed to just dealing with the metrics.
As opposed to just having mentors and sponsors. How do you make sure that they actually are good at it?
Okay, thank you. And then we'll get you, Tim, and also I think...
and Kellogg has a 2 years mentorship program. I think duration is very important. And in that way, you can measure the effectiveness of mentorship. And in the middle of the program, you will get a questionnaire. Or feedback sessions, how it's going. So I think it's a very commitment and measurement and tracking the progress during the course of the 2 years. I think that works. And more importantly, Kellogg is doing mentorship for cross-culture mentorship program and targeting for senior managers, as you mentioned, because retention starts increasing after the senior managers, right? So.
And there's that bonus that you talked about.
Exactly. And 2 years mentorship program. So very, very committed.
So I'd love to hear about the IT sector too, because I know you were talking about metrics and developing a certain talent within the organisation. How do you monitor the quality and the quantity then?
Well, we actually had a similar program, mentorship, in 2-year program. So that's pretty similar. But also, I guess this is part of the IT's benefit, where technology itself helps people work from home. So for Twitter, we have, I think, a few days per month where there's a program called Work from Home. So whether you're male or female, you're allowed to work from home, and you're connected with it through the internet.
Sure.
So you're mandatory to actually go on a meeting through the video conference, but still you can be with your family or your kids, or whoever you want to be with.
And you manage your own day.
That's correct. That's correct.
I think we all want to work with Twitter, don't we? Now, I just am conscious of the time, and the timekeepers are glaring at me at the moment. We've got 12 minutes or so before we have to move on. So I'd love to get the panellists to start thinking about some of the action items and some of the things that we can do based on the discussion that we've had. We've learned a lot about some of the mentorship programs, the sponsorship programs. We've learned about life balance as opposed to work-life balance. We're now talking about how we measure the engagement that we might have. What do we do? Because, once again, I don't want to harp entirely on what the Australian exercise is, but the Male Champions of Change have started a new slogan that says 50-50, if not, why not? And I think it's really effective. I think it says, if it isn't 50-50, as you said, Tim, in your organisation, why isn't it that way? So, but it's all very well to say, if not, why not? But then how do we bring that about? How do we change that? And I've got a few people smiling at me at the front. Monica might have some ideas about how you do change it. I don't know if people want to jump in and help us develop a sort of a set of actions, maybe. Because I think it's important to think about what your own role is, over and above what your role is in the company too. We've heard about some great practice and some great leaders today. So let's go through the panel and talk about some of the things that you think we could actually do. Go, Inoue-san.
Hi.
See what it's like?
For Kellogg Japan, I will kick off Women of Kellogg. So this is really the program of promoting women's enhancement with the professional educations, as well as mentoring and sponsoring, and also work and life balance and community. So those are 4 pillars to help women to be a woman.
Well, what do you think that the audience could do from today differently to how we might do it now to try and embody some of the principles that will be part of your Women of Kellogg's program?
So I really suggest men, you ask a simple question, sit down to have a cup of coffee with your female colleagues. How are you doing? Are you happy? How can I help you? So those are the 3 words, All
right, so we've got have a coffee, have a conversation. And listen?
Listen and find out, really build emotional understanding. Not from the, logical understanding, more emotional understanding.
Make the men get the coffee for the women.
Well, we've already got that one. That's a great. Yeah. So your mum raised you proper. But I mean, I think that buys into Sarah's comment, which is that if you just need a few people to stand up and say, "No, I'm actually going home now," because you don't have to say why. Possibly, I don't know, but maybe it's that action in sitting down, having a coffee, having a chat, and just listening about what that person's looking to do. How would you do it, Sasamoto-san? What are some of the things that you could do, or what do you suggest for all of us tomorrow, from today, actually?
Sure. Besides bringing coffee?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
No tweeting.
And not tweeting. The coffee was interesting because we have this weekly after 5 informal session called Tea Time every Friday from 5 p.m. And we actually it doesn't have to be Friday. It's every day after 5. We open this large conference room for everyone in the office, and we serve wine, champagne, sake, shochu, whatever.
Who's going next? What's today?
This is a great informal sort of get together and not go out in Shinjuku or Ginza or whatever. It's just within we're just next to this building here, but actually it gives the opportunity for people to mingle more casually.
Do people feel they can leave that, then they can be part of it, but then break away when they need to? Does that allow people to break away? So that might be something, mightn't it? That you're giving people a chance to put a stop to not finishing it perfectly and saying it's tea time.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, okay. So that's building on this. It's more a conversation though, isn't it? It's allowing people that flexibility to just talk and break away from things.
Right.
Honma-san, are you going to do 5 o'clock tea time? I think that would... How disruptive to the markets would that be?
Champagne and shochu, and not my CEO and COO are here, so maybe
I could see the
sign off on the spot here, but
go for it.
So I didn't speak about this already, but we do have an organization called DB Women. That's kind of the women's network event. We also have what we call the Deutsche Club, sort of a pun on the word, but that's open for all staff. It's just a networking, whether it be wine tasting, barbecue, what have you, all sorts of different events that people can join and build a network. But I think to Sarah's point earlier, I think it's important especially for male managers, to really recognize that them prioritizing family, and again, that does not excuse them from performance. We don't get to lower our budget because our kids are doing a play. However, I think it's important for managers to show that that's important to them, and really understand what women and all staff have in terms of their private lives and their priorities. And to my point earlier, I think it's also important to recognize that not all women want exactly the same thing. People want different paths to success. So it's important to recognize that and make sure that people who support that are recognized for their help in that. One specific point might be very difficult to implement, but as we were brainstorming internally, people at various times in their lives and careers need a certain chunk of time off. You could do that from pure, vacation days or whatever. But we don't have, for males, we don't have, our paternity leave, for example, is only 5 days, right? Maybe we can lengthen that further. And I think for most Japanese, or many Japanese families, when the kids get to sort of 6th grade and start to study for the entrance exams, that's also a very stressful time, and if you have more than one child, there's a lot of juggling going on in terms of taking who to where. So maybe giving the fathers, in addition to the mothers, some time off, sort of free extra vacation days during the year, might relieve some of the tension.
How's your senior management
well.
dealing with all of this on the front row at the moment? I think that... No, but I think it's a good point, because what you're saying is also therefore that you could use that as a model for other people in the
and take some of the stigma away
from that.
That's
and
right.
that goes to Sarah's point before too. Skara-san, what would you do differently? What do you think we can all do?
Yes, this has been going on, but the simple thing is to have a conversation. Yeah, that's important. Because in Japan, Japanese company, even amongst women, or especially between women and men, it's difficult. It's difficult to say what is difficult, to raise a difficult point. So I think it's important to start from there. And it's a technical issue, but this is recommended for men. I have 10 points that I'd like you to check. 10 actions you can start today. This is not a homework, but if you check this, I think this would be useful. And regardless of women or men, we need to create inclusive workplace. And you need to change this working style. Both men and women need to change the work style. From my experience, I have 3 children. I had been a part-timer. I had worked from home. So I tried to change my working style. So managers who have this kind of women, they need to change the management style. They need to become an inclusive leader. They need different managerial skills. So can you check whether you can act as an inclusive leader? So I have prepared a quiz. So please do try these quizzes.
People can follow and can learn from, I think, and that's very, very useful. Now, can I throw to Tim without getting into trouble? Tim, would you like to tell us, what do you think we can do? Because you don't want it to be just ideas or principles.
So there's a risk. Let's try and get into concrete things. So the principle, let's start there and then look at what we do. The principle that I think we're all saying is that we need to get more women into our organizations, and then once women are in the organization, we need to remove any barriers, whether conscious or subconscious, that limit their growth. So getting in, some examples that have worked for us is when we do a brief to recruit a new manager, the agencies that we work with, 12 or 13 different partners in Japan, know that every shortlist has to have male and female on that shortlist. So that's back to metrics. That's a metric. They failed. They don't get paid if they don't bring that. Secondly, every interview that we do at Coca-Cola has male and female people part of the interview panel. All the time trying to tackle what is a potential subconscious bias. And it's tricky because the whole point about it being subconscious, you don't know it's there. So there's no point having an interview panel of men. They just say, oh, we don't have that bias. Well, how do they know? So we always have short lists with females. We always have interview panels with females. We have not only metrics for what percentage of the population, of our corporate population should be female, but even by job grade, as our internal grading system. And then we measure for every job that becomes available, what is the fill rate for male or female, to make sure that we're changing those job grades. So that's a start, getting people in and making sure they get promoted. Why we do it is this old statement that we've all made over and over again, which is it's good for business. It's diversity in all forms, and today, of course, is about male and female, but in all forms, diversity is important, and it's proven by so many organizations. You don't need my data. So many organizations can prove that having a more diverse organization leads to a happier organization, a more engaged organization, and a more engaged organization will be a more successful organization. So we're absolutely firmly believe in it. We're not, by the way, some of my team members are in the audience. I'm not saying we got it right.
No,
we're working on it.
Yeah.
We know some of the areas we need to do more, and I can feel in my heart the benefit of the progress that we're making.
We've got a lot of Australian CEOs who have signed up to what we call the panel pledge. And so when the CEOs are asked if they will speak on a panel, they say no if it's an all-male panel. They then provide a list of appropriate and well-placed, suitably qualified potential panellists that the organisers might like to look at. Some of our CEOs have signed up to a pledge that means that they will not work with suppliers who do not have sufficient number of women in their upper management, groupings. So I know that they're quite sort of, well, some would say draconian, but they're specific measures that a group of very influential men have said, no, this is what we're going to do because we want to disrupt the circumstances. Ryan.
There's a lot of suggestions on what organisations can do, but I think a lot of the audience here are younger women who maybe don't have the power to influence. What I try and tell my staff, that I see the difference between my male staff and my female staff, is my male staff will come and say to me, I'm ready for a promotion. But my female staff don't do that so much. So if you are a young woman in a large organisation, you need to go to your person who is, your manager or whatever, and you need to say, I'm ready for a promotion and this is the salary if you have the power to negotiate, depending on your organisation, because your male colleagues are doing that. Even if they're not ready, I say that because a lot of them have a higher opinion of themselves.
So Ryan, do you think that the suggestion that more conversation, more discussion, more listening, if that interaction takes place, that will draw it out, surely?
Yeah. Well,
it'll work, won't it? It'll start to work.
Back to actions. You wanted actions. And I think we've all got some thoughts, hearing from each other's best practice or good practice. That's a great build from the audience, which is the phrase that was used earlier in the plenary session about change starts from the top. Yep. It doesn't have to be that way. No. The most powerful change starts with, as we heard this morning, from a small group of committed people, irrespective of their role. Yep. So sure, we have a role to play as leaders. Those of us who are leaders in the room have a role to play, but also those of us who are not leaders have a role to play to drive change, to go back and start requesting things, start modelling behaviour that we want. Then there's much more chance that it will happen, because it can't only be coming from the top. It has to come from all through the organisation, all through society.
Indeed. Any other comments? Thank you.
We've talked a lot about leadership and the importance of senior people being influential. Indeed, Alison Watkins at Coca-Cola Amatil is a mentor to my sister, and she does a terrific job. At the other end of the spectrum, the more junior people, if you look at the fastest change in social attitudes in the history of the world has been in relation to LGBT, and it's largely been driven by young people and actually also by social media. So there's a question for Sasamoto-san. How do we get younger people, and particularly young men, more involved in driving change in terms of attitudes?
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one, but I think it goes back to really education because, I mean, as I said, my first day at Recruit, that was the wake-up call, right? But that's out of college, right? If the education started much earlier for young male boys, that will be even much more easier for adopting the concept. So I think the education is the key. Maybe from the family stage. I mean, year one.
I can see a lot of people nodding around that comment. It's about what the family, how you, what you discussed really, probably, isn't it, and just how it plays out. Have we got any other specific suggestions? Because we really are running out of time now. But that's no pressure. どうぞどうぞ森先生。いつでも時間は作ります。
We can make up a time all the time. Well, thank you very much. Now, in Australia, I've spoken with Broderick-san. He came to the office, the ministry office, and and she said that to me. 10 years ago, even Australia was not completely equal between men and women, but men started to promote empowerment of women, male championship. Ever since that program was being started, things got so much faster, and I thought this has to be it, and I started this in Japan. So in Europe and the US, we cannot make things as quick as the West because we are dominated by men. Because Keidanren as the business association, 1,300 member states, all the board members were male completely. That was the starting point. So unless we have leadership in the change that coming from men, that doesn't change. So we decided to go Australian style. And in the during the lunchtime, there were panel discussions. Men who are coming to our membership in Japan, who leveraged and started our actions. And fortunately, we are expanding the memberships. And we are now, there's something unique in Japan, which I wanted to share with you. Now, we call it Boys Club, Men's Club. So we launched something called Men's Club, but Girls Club were being launched separately. So they come to the minister's office once a month. So women who are extremely busy always make sure they visit to minister's office because they have wonderful ideas. And girls club and boys club, sometimes we decided to meet them up together. And men's are, guess what, very happy to meet them. And men's leaders, they are working very hard, but combined, the inspiration coming from girls, the chemistry is explosive. And I thought that was, we are talking about what actions. As soon as we leave this room, so my recommendation is join the boys club, the presidents, right? And I was like, in the lunchtime, and somebody approached me that they wanted to come to join us. But it doesn't have to all coming from your company, right? You get ideas from different organizations, particularly from women leaders. And another thing is educating men. While educating men, there were so many people, bad enough, education cannot do any better for them. So the presidents is now awakened. Now young males, I guess us in Japan 10 years ago, the engineering classes and the cooking classes got converged. So men and women both went through the same program. So they are like very good at engaging family chores. But everybody who's older than that, they were in trouble. They were very hard to change. So it's the middle management between the top management and the young. And at the Catalyst, we have you saw the checklist. We asked those questions. You as the middle management, are you interested in IKU men who are engaged in family? And because we invite them to drink coffee with us, but they don't know what to talk about. We incentivize them to go back home earlier, but they have no place in home. So those are the people, and the government is trying to put the program together to help those poor souls, help us. Great, thank you. Well, in that sense, we were starting to see the hope, but I thought the hopes were gone. But the
sense is that there is a need for us to stand aside our colleagues in Japan and allow for a system that's suitable for Japan. And I think that was our initial point, really, about not applying a foreign model, not insisting on a change at a pace that we dictate, but that listening, having a coffee, having tea time, the Twitter style, but also knowing that sometimes it's really about disrupting that process. One thing that I would like to suggest, and I do this all the time, and it doesn't always meet with success. In fact, it sometimes just doesn't at all. But I always email people. Japan has meishi. What a wonderful system. You get a meishi, anybody can write to anybody, and I suggest that everybody is brave and writes to people. I write to all sorts of shachos. I write to Abe Sori. I haven't had a response yet, but I write, and I write about all sorts of things. I take articles out of the Nikkei Shimbun, I add bits and pieces, I send it off. But I really think you've got to be committed and you've got to write. You've got to say, hello, I heard you speak at wherever. I saw something on the TV. And just jump in. And it is amazing how many responses you get. So I think that's something that I would suggest that Japanese colleagues here who are talking about how they might bring about change in their own organisation. Ryan was talking about what women could do, saying, I need to talk to you about my situation. Well, start writing to them and getting them to know you is really important. And I think that's what can happen when we're talking about this interaction that we're going to be engaged in. So now it really is the end of the session because we've got our own tea time coming. And I'd like to thank all the panellists. I'd like you to join me in thanking all the panellists.